Ryan never expected his morning to start with panic. He was usually calm, patient, and careful with everything he did on the research station. Even when machines broke or alarms rang for no reason, he never felt stressed. But today was different. Today he found himself sprinting across the loading bay like his life depended on it. Or rather, someone else's life. Lyra, his new alien maid and assistant, was standing under the cargo rail with a small data pad in her tiny hands. She was typing quietly, her soft blue hair falling over her eyes. She was only as tall as Ryan's forearm, and her slim figure made her look even more delicate. Her species, the Lyrians, were known for their gentle nature and their small size. Most people on the station treated them like fragile ornaments, but Ryan respected her. She was hardworking, focused, and always tried to help even when her hands were too tiny to carry anything heavy. "Lyra, move!" he shouted. She looked up, confused. She didn't understand why his voice suddenly sounded so sharp. Her round silver eyes blinked as she tilted her head, waiting for him to explain. But there was no time to explain. The heavy cargo crate above her had slipped. One of the magnetic clamps holding it had failed, sparks flying from its edge. The crate was already falling. If it hit her, she would be gone in a heartbeat. Ryan didn't think. He acted. He threw himself forward, sliding across the floor, and grabbed her with both hands at the last possible second. His arms scooped her up, and he rolled sideways, just as the crate came crashing down where she had been standing. The impact shook the entire deck. Dust and metal fragments flew across the floor. Ryan's heart pounded as he held Lyra to his chest. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Lyra's tiny fingers gripped his uniform tightly. Her whole body shook, and she slowly lifted her head to look at him. She seemed shocked, like she still didn't understand what had happened. "You're okay," he said softly, still breathing hard. "You're safe." Her eyes widened, and her lips trembled. She pressed her face against his chest, letting out a small, shaky sound. It wasn't a cry. It was more like a frightened chirp, the sound her species made when scared. Ryan tried to set her down gently, but she instantly wrapped her arms around his uniform again, almost climbing his torso. She refused to leave his hold. "Lyra, it's okay," he whispered. "The danger is gone now." But she didn't believe him. Her species had a well-known instinct. When they faced sudden danger, they clung to the nearest living being they trusted. It was a natural, protective reaction. Ryan had heard about it, but he had never experienced it until now. He sighed softly. He couldn't force her down. That would only scare her more. So he stood up slowly, keeping her secure in his hands. She curled close to him, shaking. A few workers who had heard the crash rushed over. They stared at the destroyed crate, then at Ryan holding the trembling little alien against his chest. "Whoa," one of them said. "You saved her just in time." Another worker nodded. "Good thing you were fast. Lyrians don't survive impacts like that." Someone else laughed lightly. "And now she's going to cling to you for the rest of the day. Maybe longer." Ryan swallowed. He knew they were joking, but Lyra's grip didn't loosen even a little. "I'll take her somewhere quiet," he said. He walked out of the loading bay, Lyra still holding on to him tightly. Every time his hand shifted even slightly, she tightened her grip more. Her face was buried in his uniform like she was trying to hide from the world. Ryan took her to his workshop room. It was quieter there, with only the soft hum of machines. He closed the door behind them and sat gently on a small bench. He kept his arms steady so she wouldn't feel any sudden movement. "It's okay," he whispered again. "You're safe. Nothing will hurt you." She slowly lifted her head. Her silver eyes were glassy, filled with leftover fear. She reached out one tiny hand and touched his neck softly, as if checking he was really there. "Ryan," she whispered in a trembling voice. He smiled. Yeah, I'm here. She lowered her head again, pressing closer. Rian wondered how long she would cling like this. He never minded helping her. She was good company and very kind. But he felt responsible for her now. He wanted her to feel safe again. Minutes passed. Her trembling softened, but she didn't let go. She sat in his lap quietly, her arms still wrapped around his chest. Then something odd crossed Ryan's mind. That cargo crate shouldn't have fallen. The magnetic clamps were newly installed. They were tested yesterday. There was no reason for them to fail like that. His brows lowered. He remembered seeing sparks on the clamp before it dropped. That meant more than just a malfunction. Someone might have damaged it on purpose, but who would want to sabotage the station? He didn't want to worry Lyra, so he kept his thoughts quiet. He gently lifted her just a little to adjust his seating position. She instantly hugged him again, as if worried he would disappear. "You're still scared, huh?" he whispered. She nodded gently, her blue hair brushing against his chin. "Do you want some water?" he asked. She shook her head. "Do you want to rest?" She shook her head again. "Do you want to stay like this?" She froze, then nodded slightly. She didn't speak, but her actions made it very clear. She felt safe only with him. Ryan sighed softly, but smiled. "Okay, you can stay." The moment he said that, her grip softened just a little. Not enough to let go, but enough to show she trusted him completely. Hours passed slowly. Ryan tried to continue his work while holding Lyra carefully. She stayed either on his lap or his shoulder, refusing to be more than a few centimeters away from him. If he moved, she moved. If he walked, she grabbed his collar. If he stopped, she sat against his chest again. Everyone who saw them whispered or smiled. She really attached herself to him. Lyrians are cute when they're scared. He's basically carrying a tiny shadow now. Ryan didn't care about their comments. He only cared that Lyra was calm, but something else bothered him. He visited the damaged cargo clamp again. Lyra stayed on his shoulder, holding onto his uniform tightly. She watched his every movement closely. Ryan crouched down and inspected the broken mechanism. The magnetic clamp hadn't simply failed, it had been cut. A sharp tool had sliced through the energy conduit. Someone had wanted the crate to fall. Lyra tugged his collar lightly. She made a quiet, uneasy chirp. Her species could sense unusual vibrations, especially when something dangerous was near. "Did you feel something?" Ryan asked softly. She nodded and pointed toward the corridor. Ryan frowned. He stood up slowly and followed her direction. The corridor was dim, one of the lights flickering. Lyra's grip tightened again. She hid behind his neck, peeking out carefully. Ryan scanned the shadows. He felt something too. Something like someone watching. "Is someone there?" he called out, his voice steady. There was no answer. But Lyra chirped again, sharper this time. She pointed at a dark corner where the wall panels were slightly open. Ryan approached carefully. Footsteps suddenly echoed behind them. He spun around, but the hallway was empty. Lyra trembled harder. "It's okay," he whispered. "I won't let anything happen to you." A soft clicking sound filled the air, coming from the shadows behind the broken wall panel. Ryan stepped closer. The panel jolted. A figure jumped out. Ryan barely had time to pull Lyra close to his chest before something rushed toward them. The lights above flickered again. A cold shiver ran down his spine as the shadow moved too quickly for him to see its shape clearly. Lyra's tiny voice broke into a frightened, desperate sound. Ryan took a step back, protecting her without thinking. Something, or someone, lunged forward, and the hallway filled with the sound of metal scraping. Ryan tightened his hold on Lyra and braced himself. Part 1 ends here, with danger closing in on both of them. The shadow rushed toward Ryan, fast and silent. He moved on instinct. stepping back while keeping Lyra tight against his chest. She was trembling, gripping his uniform so hard her knuckles turned pale. Ryan didn't know what was coming at them, but he knew one thing for sure. He would not let it touch her. A long, thin hand shot out of the darkness, swiping at the air where Ryan had been standing a moment ago. The creature stepped into the flickering light. It was not fully human, not fully alien, but something in between. Tall, masked, and covered in dark gear. Its glowing visor reflected the hallway lights. Its movements were sharp and purposeful. Ryan had seen this type before. Not exactly this person, but this style. They belonged to a group known for stealing advanced research equipment from isolated stations like this one. They were professionals, dangerous ones. The masked intruder tilted their heads slightly as if studying him. Then they looked at Lyra, who tried to hide in Ryan's arms. "So that's what you're after?" Ryan said under his breath. "You hurt the clamp to cause chaos? And now you want more?" The intruder took a step forward. Ryan didn't wait for another attack. He turned and ran down the hallway. Lyra pressed firmly against him. His boots echoed on the metal floor. Lyra looked over his shoulder and let out a sharp chirp, warning him that the intruder was chasing them. Ryan sprinted toward a security door. "Hold on," he whispered. She squeezed his collar in response. He reached the door and pressed his ID chip to the scanner. The door opened a second later. Ryan slipped inside and shut it behind them, locking it from the control panel. He leaned against the door, breathing hard. Lyra lifted her head. Her tiny hand touched his cheek gently. She made a soft sound, asking if he was okay. "I'm fine," he said. "You?" She nodded weakly, though she was still trembling. But now she was trembling less from fear and more from worry for him. Ryan realized something important in that moment. She was scared for herself, yes, but she was scared for him too. He didn't have time to think more. Loud banging echoed from behind the door. The intruder was trying to force it open. Ryan looked down at Lyra. "We need help." She nodded again, determination replacing some of her fear. Ryan placed her on his shoulder carefully, and she immediately held on to him. He opened the door on the opposite side of the room and ran into the engineering sector. The area was full of pipes, humming machines, and crates of tools. The intruder followed. Ryan heard them enter the room behind him. He ducked around a corner, heading toward a maintenance ladder. Lyra tapped his neck, pointing upward, a warning that the intruder was closing in faster than he expected. Ryan climbed the ladder quickly. Lyra clung tightly, her small legs wrapped around his shoulder. Once they reached the top, Ryan slid into a narrow walkway above the machinery. His breathing steadied. "We need to think," he whispered. Lyra sat against his neck. Then she pointed downward silently. Ryan followed her gaze. The intruder was now scanning the room below, searching carefully. Ryan felt anger rising inside him. Someone had tried to hurt Lyra earlier with the falling crate, and now someone was chasing them like they were prey. He wouldn't allow it. He moved quietly across the walkway, hoping to reach the emergency alert station. Lyra suddenly chirped softly, warning him to stop. He froze. A second intruder entered the room. This one was smaller, wearing a similar mask, but carried a scanning device. The machine beeped and flickered. It was detecting body heat. "Damn," Ryan whispered. "We need another way." Lyra tapped his cheek, signaling that she had an idea. She pointed toward the upper ventilation tunnel. Her species was small enough to fit inside easily, but Ryan shook his head instantly. "No, I'm not sending you in there alone." She looked at him with wide, worried eyes, then touched her chest gently, trying to assure him she would be okay. She wanted to help, but he couldn't let her go by herself. He couldn't risk it. Instead, he looked around and spotted a hanging cable coil. Slowly, carefully, he grabbed it and used it to swing onto another walkway across the room. Lyra held on tightly, burying her face in his shoulder during the jump. They landed softly on the metal floor. But the landing made a small sound. Both intruders turned. Ryan ran again, heading deeper into the engineering sector. Pipes hissed around him. Steam vents opened as he passed. Lyra pointed ahead. She sensed vibrations coming from the left. Someone else was coming. Ryan changed direction instantly and entered a smaller maintenance area. He found a control panel and started pressing commands. Lyra watched him closely, trusting him completely. The intruders reached the doorway. Ryan hit one final switch. The metal shutters slammed down between them with a loud clang. That would slow the intruders but not stop them. They would find another route. Ryan kept moving. He almost reached the emergency alert panel when Lyra suddenly stiffened on his shoulder. She grabbed his collar and pulled it sharply. He turned just in time to avoid a metal rod swinging toward his head. Another intruder was waiting in the shadows. Ryan reacted quickly. He ducked, grabbed a nearby tool from the counter, and used it to block the second swing. The force sent him stumbling backward. Lyra held on tightly, eyes wide, fear returning. The intruder came closer, swinging again. Ryan blocked once more. The impact numbed his arm. Lyra chirped loudly in distress, and her body started glowing faintly, a natural reaction from her species when overwhelmed by fear. But the glow also meant something else. A high-frequency sound was building in her throat. Ryan remembered her species' natural defensive ability. Their chirps were soft normally, but in danger they could release high-pitched waves that disoriented attackers. "Lyra," he whispered, "I need your help, just a little." She hesitated, shaking. She didn't want to hurt anyone, but she wanted to protect Ryan more than anything. She held onto his uniform tightly and let out a sharp, strong chirp. The intruder flinched, stumbling. Ryan seized the moment. He stepped forward and pushed the attacker back with all his strength. The intruder crashed into a crate and fell. Ryan didn't wait. He grabbed Lyra securely and ran for the emergency alarm. He slammed his palm against the button. The station lights turned red. Loud sirens echoed through every hallway. Security teams would be arriving soon. Lyra exhaled shakily and leaned her forehead against his collar, exhausted from the effort. Ryan stroked her tiny back gently. "You did great," he whispered. She made a soft sound, relieved. Footsteps approached quickly, this time from allies. 3 security officers arrived and secured the room. They scanned for intruders, who had already started retreating now that the alarms were active. They had failed their mission. One officer looked at Ryan. "You okay?" "I'm fine," Ryan said. "But they were after something." The officer nodded. "We'll track them." Ryan walked away, holding Lyra close. As the danger faded, her fear slowly melted into a different emotion, an emotion stronger and warmer. She pressed her face against his neck, clinging not out of panic anymore, but out of comfort and happiness. Hours later, after giving a report to the captain, Ryan returned to his quarters. He sat on his bed and finally relaxed. Lyra sat quietly in his hands now, her tiny legs folded under her. She still held on to his fingers, not wanting to be even an inch away from him. He smiled slightly. "You can rest now. You're safe." She didn't let go. Instead, she crawled up to his shoulder and leaned against his cheek. Her small voice broke the silence. "Ryan, thank you." He looked at her gently. "I'm just glad you're okay." She shook her head. "You saved me. Again. You protect me always." Ryan touched her tiny hand with his finger. "Of course I do." She hesitated for a long moment, then spoke softly. "I want to stay with you. Always. I feel safe only with you." His heart warmed. She wasn't clinging out of fear anymore. She was clinging because she wanted to, because she trusted him more deeply than anyone else. "You can stay," he said quietly, "as long as you want." She brightened instantly. Her silver eyes shone softly as she hugged his cheek. The danger was over. The station was safe again. But something had changed between them, something gentle and strong, a bond born from fear, strengthened by trust, and warmed by the strange comfort they brought each other. From that day on, Lyra didn't cling because she was scared. She clung because she had chosen him, and Ryan didn't mind at all.